Yes, you guessed it right. I do not like Marvel movies. I've been a massive fan of Marvel movies ever since, Sony, 20th Century Fox, and the other studios were around. But when Disney took reins of the entire franchise in their own hands, they managed to make massive blunders. You know, 11 years they managed to establish one single story that was a cohesive narrative apparently, and almost all the movies would lead into one big event, and that one big event would turn out to be such a catastrophe for the entire franchise that right now you see the MCU is in shambles. And don't get me wrong, I do understand that the people like those movies. People really like those movies. There's a reason why those movies end up earning billions of dollars at the box office. But for the last 6 years, they have not been able to do that concept rightly now. And of course, as a person who does not really have much hopes with Captain America and Brave New World, I'll tell you why I do not like the MCU. This is going to be a one-part video and I'm not going to make any part 2s of it. I hope you will like this video anyway, so please subscribe before you move ahead and let's get started. So, the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, has been a massive mess for a long time now. The reason? They were just trying to build one particular movie where everything would come and end again. They never really planned long term. And in the words of the great Francis Ford Coppola, they were basically trying to make a factory line of movies where every single movie resembles the other movie and almost every movie leads to the other movie in terms of a narrative structure. But guess what? They made a big mistake. They never really realized that movies beyond Infinity War also have an existence of their own. That movies beyond Endgame do have an existence of their own. There's a big reason why not a lot of movies post Endgame and Infinity War have been raking billions of dollars at the box office, with a few exceptions here and there, of course. But then again, everybody seems to have agreed to the fact that Marvel has now lost its mojo. Too many TV shows, too many movies, too many Hotstar or Disney Plus series. There's just too much content to follow. And as somebody who has not been a Marvel fan for a very long time now, who sort of never understood the weird cult behind those movies, this is my opinion behind why I think those movies are not exactly my favorites, and I could give you hundreds and hundreds of examples of them. So stay tuned, guys.
This was fun! No!
Now, if we were to talk about the CGI part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, this is one of the most notorious criticisms the entire franchise has ever had in the last couple of years. See any movie before Endgame, you could see hundreds of instances where the CGI work is not done well. Particularly, for instance, Spider-Man's debut movie in the MCU, you see he is trying to hold a ship and his costume does not show any sign of wear and tear. There are scenes in Captain America Civil War where you see that the heroes are battling it out on the airport of Berlin, and that airport looks very, very weird. Not because of the fact that it does not seem to have any people, it does not seem to have any natural activity, it's just a CGI background. The entire thing is nothing but a CGI background done to death. And I can practically tell you this because of the fact that it looked way too unnatural and just didn't stick so well in the context of the movie. If there's anything I learned about CGI in the last couple of years, it's just that it either sticks out like a sore thumb or it manages to integrate well into the screenplay and of course the scene it's being showcased in. Now, this is one of the biggest criticisms the MCU has faced in the last couple of years, and I genuinely think that this is becoming a big problem right now, considering how Endgame was absolutely reliant on CGI, and I did not even find this story very convincing. A couple of years back, me and my sister were having a discussion about how the MCU would end on a very, very devastating note, and she clearly told me that all the heroes that were snapped at the end of Infinity War would be back in Endgame. And that's one of the worst things about movies these days. Even 7 to 8 year old kids are able to predict what happens in films, and that's absolutely not good, because this is not how films are supposed to be, I think. So that concludes my point for CGI. The writing for the MCU movies is also pretty controversial when it comes to criticizing the overall MCU. For some reason, I never really liked the dialogue delivery of those movies. The dialogue delivery was off for most of the time. The humor, of course, seems to be coming off like in any sequence, in any particular scene, wherever it is not required to. Of course, I do understand that characters like Spider-Man in the comics do a lot of continuous commentary when they act or of course do those weird action sequences, but nonetheless this does not translate so well into the movies for some reason. I don't know why, but a lot of the dialogue in most of the movies of the MCU seems off, and somehow these problems that were sort of underlining the MCU up until 2019, they became even bigger by the time most of the original cast managed to leave the roster. I don't know what will happen with the new Avengers movies that are coming up, but I do hope that they might make some corrections. But the question is, will it really work or will it not really work? Because 7 long years of continuous failures and continuous disasters after disasters at the box office, if there's one thing I've learned, I've only understood that this will not be cured anytime soon, because your fundamentals were never really strong at the first place. Let's look at the idea. The writing for most of the movies was generally off. All the movies practically looked the same in terms of tone, setting, and mood as well. Even the camera quality, or of course, let's say just the overall look of the film, looked similar. They all looked the same. If you ever managed to look at Spider-Man and X-Men, the 2002 and 2000 movie respectively, you can see a drastic difference in terms of tonality and quality. While one film seems to be a little light in terms of the locations that it has chosen, X-Men is on the other hand a very dark movie, and of course the movie relies mostly on dramatic heights, not the action spectacle that Spider-Man was. Anyway, putting that into perspective, I didn't really like most of the writing and of course the dialogues of the MCU. Some of the CGI, like I mentioned in the previous video, was of course off, and I cannot really forget that sequence where Black Panther is doing the exact same thing which Wolverine was doing in the 2000 X-Men movie. That is a glaring similarity that I managed to notice on my watch of that particular scene from Black Panther. This concludes the point about bad writing. To sum it all up, I genuinely feel the MCU needs a revitalization. We need to employ directors or at least filmmakers that have some merit, that have some interest in comic books, that know that comic books are not just child's playthings. They can be much more than that. If you ever look at the Panini Marvel pocket books, you can find out there are so many stories inside those books that can be narrated into big screen spectacles. But the question is, will Disney do it? I don't think so, because if you simply look at their history of annexing various different franchises and IPs across Hollywood, they've managed to ruin so many of them. Star Wars into the dust, Indiana Jones into the dust, of course Lucasfilm and other properties into the dust. I just don't understand why they keep doing this again and again. Marvel could definitely be another juggernaut in the box office, but not at the expense of good CGI or good effects or good action, but good storytelling. I never really understood the storytelling elements of Marvel at all. Never really understood them. But for some reason I can tell you that while it was entertaining the people for almost a decade, that entertainment practically collapsed. That entire state is trying to sell you a concept which looked very cool, by the way, that did not look so cool after 2019. People's perspectives changed so dynamically and so rapidly that now the MCU is in a state of shambles. And I do not need to tell you about the number of critiques that are making different kinds of videos stating how the MCU is now the MCU, or how the MCU has lost its way, how the MCU has basically gone down the drain now, how the MCU is dead. There are hundreds of videos on YouTube which you can find on the same topic. But my stance remains pretty clear. Unless and until they start making some script writing or let's say story writing changes, I do not think the MCU is going to come back. And this time, please try to hire directors on the basis of merit, not on the basis of representation. This is me, John Matthew, the CineManiac, signing off. Thank you guys for watching my video up until this point. Please keep buying films on physical media. That's the best and the most amazing way to protect movies for long. Stay safe, bye bye, and Godspeed.